I want people to understand that it started with patience.
Right. And you know, the idea of you just said to sort of isolating the problem. So, you know, the ultimate problem was kids getting injured and hurting their heads. But the problem that we decided was we weren't going to try to fix kids to ride safer. That was too tough a thing to happen.
Yeah.
And so instead, we really said, all right, we're going to sort of deal with what we have, kids riding bicycles. What can we do that's going to make that ride safer? That's ideally using a helmet. So that was really, it was kind of this tunnel vision. Here's the problem. Here's what we're going to focus on. We're not going to get distracted about trying to make kids safer riders and that kinds of stuff. We're really going to focus on how can we get helmets on kids. Yeah, you're right. He really did love Harborview because it really takes care of the most vulnerable people in our society. And really it kind of attracted docs like your dad that were a little bit of iconoclast, didn't necessarily fit well in the corporate model that medicine has become, and really wanted to kind of work outside of the corporate model and really directly what can we do to help families and make communities healthier and safer. And you know, there are a lot of people at Harborview that were like that, and he really fit in so well with
Yeah.
Harborview. You know, it was you know, he loved Children's Hospital as well. Don't get me wrong, but I think he really appreciated being at Harborview for the last part of his career. I mean, we had fun there. We kind of were of one mind and really kind of felt what we were doing was important, and you know, they supported each other in doing that. You know, there was. I mean, I think that at times your dad. I mean, you know, he's I said at the memorial, he was a curmudgeon in some ways, and you know, he pissed off people at times when he wanted to get something done, and you know, at times I got caught in the crossfire, and that felt
because you're
you
such
know,
a nice person. I think that's one of the reasons you and Dad were such a great team.
you know, and that at times is a little uncomfortable. I don't know if we ever argued over it, but at times, you know, it was uncomfortable. But no, I think we felt we saw eye to eye on most things there, and you know, I was, as I said, I was so grateful that he he brought me back to Seattle. He was responsible for me getting involved with the whole problem of childhood injuries to begin with. He started the injury center, and he brought me back to Seattle to work with him on that. And obviously, 39 years later, eternally grateful for him for doing that. We had, you know, we did work on baby walkers. For people who might not know, is the problem with baby walkers is you get little toddlers in those things, and they do two things. They can tumble downstairs in those, or they can get close to like a fire or a fireplace and get burned and hurt from those. So they're really a problem. Remember, we had a resident um, who worked with us, and Abe really started what he called an advocacy rotation. So residents do like a month doing infectious diseases, a month doing nursery, a month doing ICU. And so we decided, well, let's offer an elective where they can spend a month doing advocacy. So we had a resident who worked with us on the whole problem of baby walkers, and got data on how common these injuries were, and again tried to work with the Consumer Product Safety Commission on that. I think one of the ideas was, can we make baby walkers big enough that they won't fit through a doorway? And that's actually what happened in Canada. I think they required baby walkers to be so large that they couldn't fit through a doorway. They're no longer really used. I don't think we were terribly successful in changing things, but I think we were successful in terms of raising public awareness that these things might be useful in certain circumstances, but really they have some dangers associated with them. We also found some research, we didn't do it ourselves, but we also found some research that showed that kids who spend a lot of time in baby walkers actually walk slower than kids that didn't spend time in baby walkers. So, you know, it was one of the things we try to work on. I don't know how successful we were, but we worked on that. Another area that we worked on were pedestrian injuries. You know, pedestrian injuries are a big problem for kids and for older people. And there again, it wasn't trying to make kids safer pedestrians. It was, well, what can we do to change the environment? And really work with the Department of Transportation in the city and community coalitions to really try to look at what are the areas where people are getting hurt and what can we do to try to make those intersections safer. Um, and again, I think that was successful working with these community groups, isolating intersections where you can do some modest changes in those intersections that actually can make them safer. So, we had one of our surgeons actually was hit by a car in front of the hospital crossing the street on 9th Avenue. And so Abe had the head of the traffic division of the police department come out and say, well, what can we do to make this intersection safer? And what's safer now is they have kind of a raised table there and people have to slow down to go over the speed bump. And those are the things that we developed out of that. And it was really because of Abe trying to think about, well, what can we do to really make this safer for everybody, not just one or two people? Yeah, it's those kinds of things that, are common. And you think, oh, like, then you kind of begin to look around. It's like, well, why aren't there streetlights here?
Yeah.
Why is traffic so busy here? And one of the other things that we did, that Abe had a great idea, was we looked around the world and sort of say, well, where are pediatric childhood injuries? Where are they low? Where in the world are they low? And we discovered that Sweden has very low rates of childhood injuries. And we found out that there was a pediatrician there named Ragnar Berfenstrom who really developed this idea of, he had a coalition of himself, a pediatric surgeon, and a social worker, and they met kind of monthly for years and years to try to figure out how can we make the environment safer for kids. So what Abe and I did, we actually got some grant money. We went over to Sweden, interviewed people there, and talked to people in different towns in Sweden, and found out that they had this, what's now called safe communities, but it was an approach of like, how can we make the whole community safer? So in Sweden, they diverted the busy roads to the outside around the town. And so the inner parts of the small cities were actually pretty quiet. They didn't have busy roads. And so that made it much safer for kids to be going to the street, going to school, going to the grocery store, that sort of a thing. And again, was the effect of planning, pediatricians hooking up with city planners to, on purpose, make the city safer.
Yeah.
We one of the side trips was we went to Gothenburg, which is a city that's where Volvos are made, and there's a guy there in Gothenburg who showed us the very first car seat ever made.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in Gothenburg. It was made like in the 1950s, and it was terrific. And Abe, he loved working in the clinic because he loved seeing kids, he loved taking care of kids, but he also loved being with residents and teaching residents in the clinic. Even in his late 70s, he was still working clinic and work in the wards in the clinic at Harborview, because he really loved medicine and loved pediatrics and loved doing that. And I think it's his love of pediatrics that led your sister to become a physician as well, and pediatrician, for that matter. So, Abe really, at the core, he was a doctor, and he, like me, really took his ideas of what to work on from what did he see, what patients did he see in the wards or in the emergency department. I mean, remember that one of the things he's most famous for is the Flammable Fabrics Act. And that was really from a patient that he took care of at Children's.
Yeah.
Before there was a separate burn unit at Harborview, these kids came to Children's Hospital and took care of a little girl whose nightgown caught on fire when she was close to a gas stove or a flammable stove. And so that really seared in his mind that needs to try to do something about it. And that really led to the Flammable Fabrics Act. I think that the same thing with the Sudden Infant Death Syndrome Act, that was really from taking care of these kids and seeing those patients and those parents in the emergency room, that really led to him trying to do something about Sudden Infant Death Syndrome. It was really that his identity as a physician, taking care of patients, working with residents, that really drove Abe to do the work that he did.